I don't like low poly games, but I spent an absurd amount of time with Surroundead and I'm still playing it daily. That's how good it is. Hello and welcome. In this video I will give you a brief overview what makes this amazing game so good and where it is still work in progress. There is something inherently cathartic in a post-apocalyptic game, starting out with nothing but a knife, scavenging through the leftovers of humanity, trying to survive and working your way slowly back to the top of the food chain. I'm a big sucker for these kinds of games and many people are. And a lot of games try to capture this spirit like Decay, State of Decay 2 or Once Human. But especially good single-player PvE experiences are a rare find these days. I even play single-player Tarkov for this exact feeling, even though it is a more session-based experience. But often you end up with bloated online games or unavoidable PvP elements. Surroundead manages to tick all the right boxes. It is a seamless open world, you have to manage hunger, thirst and radiation, a simple to understand crafting system that doesn't try to be a hardcore simulation of reality, a well fleshed out combat system with lots of different weapons and attachments without forcing you to be a gun nerd to get behind it, and an already pretty cool if basic base building. On paper, a lot of games manage to tick those boxes, but how those different elements ultimately play together is the make or break for a game. And another problem in my eyes is the ambition of wanting to be a hardcore simulation first and a game second. Surroundead is a game through and through and balances the simulation part around this experience, which sets it apart from games like Scum or Tarkov, for example. With fully adjustable difficulty settings, mind you, you can define loot spawn rarity for each subcategory like food, crafting materials or guns. You can change zombie spawn amount, their health and the damage they deal. I, for example, hate bullet sponges, so if I want to turn up the difficulty, I leave the enemy health unchanged but increase zombie damage or the total amount of enemies. You can even differentiate between all enemy types like bandits, zombies and soldiers and set each individually to your liking. There's even an option to activate loot degradation over time. All power to the players looms like a headline over this game, and Surroundead is a prime example how game design should be approached in the first place. To give you a thorough idea how this game plays and how it feels, I will show and describe to you the typical early game experience, the mid game after establishing some basics, and what the end game loop is like at the moment. This is based on the latest 1.5 patch, and mind you, this is still early access. The substantial patch 1.6 is just around the corner, but I will cover that in a separate video. After character creation and difficulty selection, you get a knife, a map with no idea of your own position, and that's it. Deal with it or die trying. I personally set loot spawns for everything to at least rare, so food and water can become a problem, but on normal I found it to be too generous. You will be able to deal with zombies in a one-on-one situation, but not much more. Occasionally you will get hurt and you have no healing items available. After maybe 4 hits you are dead, and if you catch a bleed before having a bandage, it is game over. You carefully approach the first locations, avoiding big settlements with lots of zombies. A backpack, some food and water, and most importantly some antiseptic to craft a few bandages are key to your survival. To build some basics you need wood and stone. You can occasionally loot these, but an axe and pickaxe would enable you to directly get those materials from rocks and trees. So you sneak around very methodically and slowly, trying to avoid as much trouble as possible. Locked containers are not available right now. First you need the tools to break into some and lockpicks plus the according skill to open the others. A car would be nice, but you need fuel and a repair kit first, and backpacks or at least clothes with pockets, otherwise you can't carry much with you. Backpack stacking, by the way, can be disabled in the settings. A toolbox for crafting materials, a lunchbox for food, those things would also free up a lot of space. At some point you will find your first gun. Maybe a bolt-action sniper or a 9mm handgun will be your first find. Do you have ammunition, a fitting magazine? And without a silencer, you will alarm everything in the area, so be very careful where to use them. Nothing beats the thrill of this early game. Depending on your difficulty selections, this phase can last longer or is over pretty quick. I died on harder difficulties from not finding food and water in time or antiseptic to craft my first bandage. The first level up also enables a very powerful skill to heal slowly back up to 80% health. I personally think this skill is too strong at the moment and should heal only back to 60% at most or be adjustable in the settings. Then we slowly get ahead of the situation. You sooner or later stumble over the first car and manage to find fuel in the repair kit. This increases your mobility and storage capacity. A GPS will finally show where on the map you are, as well as showing some points of interest. You find the tools to break into locked containers, and the first find of a fitting silencer for the sniper, hand or shotgun you carry will be a true game changer. Now you can thin out the horde before approaching a location, and bigger settlements become more manageable. But don't think any gun will save you when being swarmed, and ammunition can be very scarce depending on your settings. You slowly start to build up an arsenal of basic weapons, find attachments for those, and you will set up your first camp. Build the basic crafting stations and quickly learn that bullet crafting doesn't solve ammunition shortage unless you collect truckloads of scrap first. A well in your base or a nearby settlement will finally solve one of your immediate survival problems. Hopefully it rains occasionally though. Hunting some animals becomes essential if you set food availability to at least rare. But you slowly get in control of the situation. Every gun or attachment you find feels immensely rewarding. The basics like a flashlight and batteries, the GPS, maybe your first civilian gas mask with some filters to peek into the radiated zones with their military loot crates. But mainly you will stick to unradiated but more packed locations first. Maybe a first raid of the subway in Lawrence Creek will be your first taste of what the endgame is like and what other threats lurk in the dark. This phase feels extremely rewarding because progress is meaningful and every major equipment find gets you those sweet dopamine kicks. The base comes to shape. You think about the tactical best spot for a base, maybe one of the deserted bunkers or fire watchtowers. This is the phase you don't want to end, but ultimately you start to out-equip and outsmart your enemies. It is time for some serious raids. Here the endgame kicks in. You have collected some rare guns and equipment, and the higher grade gas masks now give 99 or 100% radiation resistance. You stock up on filters, batteries and throwables like Molotov cocktails, noisemakers and even grenades. But there are legendary weapons and equipment to be found. You have big raid locations like the airport, the valley resort or laboratory, all handcrafted with their unique challenges and high tier loot crates. There are still those dopamine kicks waiting for you, but they are fewer and you have to grind those high value points of interests for it. The endgame loop is mostly devoid of the immediate necessities like food, fuel and so on. Now you are the hunter and it is open season. Surroundead manages this phase, like the others before, very well. Those legendaries are hard to come by and the grind feels satisfying, although you ultimately miss the thrill of the earlier stages, and soon enough you will start a new save with harder settings, with a better placed base and a more knowledgeable approach. Congratulations, you are now hooked to the game. Surroundead, despite the simple looks, which you will soon totally forget about, and I say that as a big nerd for great visuals, balances each game phase for a very compelling and satisfying experience. Sure, it is still early access and you can abuse certain game mechanics if you want to. But for such a simple game, it has no right to be this good. And for around 12 bucks, it is an absolute steal. I highly recommend to give it a try. I hope this video was able to paint a decent picture of what this game is like. And thank you very much for watching to the end. For now, this is all about Surroundead. More to come soon. Take good care of yourself and enjoy the zombie apocalypse.